Welcome back to Civilian Tactical, Science Lab Edition. And by Science Lab, I literally mean a shotgun and a mud pit. Today we have this case of a very special 12 gauge ammunition. This is what's known as rock salt. Today we're gonna test this 12 gauge rock salt. We're gonna figure out how is it even made, and we're gonna pit it up against some popular alternatives. Because some people say that it is absolutely horrible, and other people say that this stuff is the absolute bee's knees. So let me run you through our series of tests we're gonna use to find out. So how are these things made? Take regular bird shot, you dump out the lead shot, and then you grab the largest rock salt you can find. I promise, this is just a bag of salt.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
You are now going to replace your lead shot with the salt itself till you end up with something like this. Simply throw on a nice crimp and you end up with some rock salt that looks very professionally made. Of course, I don't recommend you doing any of this yourself. This was done by our resident reloader. Now, why do all of this? Well, the result is a blast of salt that will cause extreme pain to an attacker without being lethal. Except unless it actually is lethal. We're gonna figure that out through our testing. So how are we gonna test the lethality? Well, we are going to use a skin, bone, and muscle analog, not ballistics gelatin. That's because I want the most accurate results for this. But first I wanna figure out, was James Bond correct? Take a look at this clip from James Bond where they used rock salt.
What's this loaded with?
Rock salt.
All right, now it's our turn. Let's see if it's movie myth or if it's reality. Now, though Billy Buckshot didn't go flying backwards, I think it's incredibly interesting that in the movie, the people seem to jump backwards because they were scared, frightened, or just a little bit stunned with pain. So I think that it's actually fairly accurate. This isn't gonna send you flying backwards, but it is going to stun you enough to jump away or just hurt you enough to drop your pistol. So I'd say this is a movie detail that James Bond actually got right. For our second test, we are going to be doing a spread test. You do not want to be using rock salt if it spreads too much at distance, because it may not even be hitting your attacker. So we have a 5-yard, a 10-yard, and a 25-yard target. First up, 5-yard target. Second, 10-yard target. Third, we have our 25-yard target. So looking at the first of our 3 targets, at 5 yards, it looks like we're getting massive peppering that would hit the entire target. That's exactly what you would want, and it definitely punched through the paper as well. Now, if we look at our 10-yard target, we're seeing a lot more spread. It looks like full body spread, some on the edges, some that even hit on the wood on the side, which makes me curious what our 25-yard target got. Taking a look at this, oh my goodness, it looks like the spread was just too much. I actually do not see one fleck of the rock salt that actually impacted. So if you're going to be using rock salt, it seems like you want to hit your target from 5 yards away or 10 yards away at the maximum. But what about the legality of this all? Now, I'm not an attorney, I'm a scientist, so take everything I say, yes, I know, with a grain of salt. Though the flashy tests will be coming later, you need to know if blasting an intruder with something like rock salt is even allowed. Some people will say use whatever means necessary to neutralize an intruder, and it's better not to take a human life if you can help it. While this is true, hand loading your own ammunition, including rock salt, means you have so many variables. You really don't know how consistent your loads are going to be. This could honestly give you some legal trouble if you were to blast a home intruder and you weren't justified in doing so, or maybe you were and they come back and sue. I've heard crazy stories of people suing for reasons that are just mind-boggling when they were doing something bad, trespassing in somebody's home, perhaps even committing burglary. My personal opinion is if you need to use lethal force, use lethal force, and if you don't need to use lethal force, don't use a real firearm. But what the heck, if you want to use rock salt, I guess, on an intruder for a less lethal round, unless our final test says that it's incredibly lethal, because that would be bad juju, and you may as well just use a lethal round if rock salt is lethal. So just think about the legality before you get cracking with your rock salt, please. Now for our next test, we're gonna go over to our table of destruction and test whether or not this 12 gauge rock salt round is better than commercially available alternatives. And it's gonna be this. These are known as javelin rounds. Essentially, it's a little torpedo shape made completely out of rubber that you can fire out of a 12 gauge shotgun. The idea is that this is less lethal, so we're gonna test the 12 gauge javelin against 12 gauge rock salt. These were sent to us by FireQuest, so thanks to them, I'm finally gonna put them to some good use. So first up, we're gonna test test that rubber javelin. We're just gonna load it in there. 3, 2, 1. Oh, that thing is dead quiet. Let's go review the slow-mo and see the damage. The jug got knocked off our table of destruction. It's right here, and I'm kind of curious if we ended up catching that javelin round. Look at this. It fell out, and it really does just look like a teeny tiny nuke. And then, of course, we have our rock salt round. We're just gonna load it in. 3, 2, 1, firing. So much louder. No unburnt powder, that thing just went boom. It actually makes me wonder if it's too powerful. Let's go see the slow-mo. Man, that slow-mo makes this look like it was an angry swarm of bees. Let's take a look at our jug. Of course, there's not gonna be anything in here besides bits of salt. So when comparing it to commercially available rounds, I would say it's equally comparable, which is actually fairly surprising. Now, I'm curious what you would pick. Would you pick the commercially available 12-gauge rubber javelin or the 12-gauge rock salt from the experimenting and testing we've done thus far? And because we got so much energy just from the water test, I'm gonna take a watermelon and we're gonna do a point blank test to see what the rock salt will do point blank. Something tells me point blank could cause a lot of damage. We're gonna find out. Firing in 3, 2, 1. So I had my mouth open for that and I literally could taste a mist of watermelon, and so did the shotgun. And in case any of you guys were wondering, this is why I wear my science goggles, even though it's not very sunny out right now. Here we've got the material for our final test. Yes, it's just a raw chicken because it's got skin, it's got muscle, and it's got bones. Like it or not, this is an incredibly accurate representation of human tissue, much better than just ballistics gelatin. So we're gonna set down our whole raw chicken and just shoot it. But before we do, a word from today's sponsor, 945 Industries. They make these awesome bags that have this pull tab. They allow you to quickly deploy your firearm and carry it on your chest. I've been using this thing for months. So let's go shoot that chicken. But if you want the best way to carry a gun off your waist and in a bag, go to 945 Industries and use code BAG10 to get 10% off. I'm gonna put that in a pinned comment. BAG10 is gonna be the code to use to get a discount. We're actually gonna hit it with 3 rounds of the rock salt so that we can definitely see our impact and how much penetration we got, unless this thing just goes flying back from a single round. 3, 2, 1. Oh, that looks like a lot of damage. Let's go take a look at these results. You guys, I gotta put the shotgun down because we need to get a closer look at this. This chicken got absolutely eviscerated. Look at that. Absolutely brutal. And it even had this plastic on top, but look at how much it tore into that chicken. That's gonna tear you apart, and I really don't think that that rubber javelin's gonna do the same damage. I'll test it real quick. Sorry, FireQuest, I used up all of your javelin rounds for this test. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, look at this. From that javelin round, we tore the plastic and smacked the chicken, but we didn't even break the skin, which is exactly how it's intended to work. Rock salt eviscerated this thing. Like, I honestly didn't expect this much damage. So what are my final thoughts on this 12-gauge rock salt? Well, it's incredibly effective from 5 to 10 yards with just a little bit too much power to be less lethal. It's incredibly powerful. Just listen to that boom compared to the less lethal javelin we shot earlier. I don't know, if you really want to send your intruders packing with stinging scars and cuts, this is gonna do it. But legally, this is incredibly questionable. So I hope this testing and our conclusive results saved you a ton of your own research and testing time. Civilian Tactical out.